O thou whose mighty palace roof doth hang from jagged trunks, and overshadoweth eternal whispers, glooms, the birth, life, death of unseen flowers in heavy peacefulness, who loves to see the hamadryads dress their ruffled locks where meeting hazels darken, and through whole solemn hours dost sit and hearken the dreary melody of bedded reeds, in desolate places, where dank moisture breeds the pippy hemlock to strange overgrowth, bethinking thee how melancholy loth thou wast to lose fair Syrinx, do thou now, by thy love's milky brow, by all the trembling mazes that she ran, hear us, great Pan.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Solacene.
Wrote that myself.
Aaron.
Yeah, I wish I did.
Who wrote it?
That is from a very tiny and almost comically worn down and beaten up old volume of John Keats' selected poems. It's a poem, I suppose, or a passage called Hymn to Pan, which is an excerpt from his larger poem called Endymion, which I believe that larger work begins with the line, "A thing of beauty is a joy forever." So I think that's very topical because for Solacene, I feel like that could be our second tagline.
A thing of beauty is a joy forever.
Yeah.
I like that.
We were kind of romantic like that.
We
in terms of poetry. But today's episode, the point is I feel like it might be unromantic in some senses, or the subject anyway is not a very romantic one, which is why I wanted to start off with something very pretty, very naturey, and also I was reading just bits and pieces from that, as I say, comically worn down volume, and was reading a little bit about John Keats and learned that he died age 25 and wrote that at least by the time he was 24, that whole Endymion poem, which was at once inspiring and at once entirely depressing. Not really depressing, but I just thought it was a nice way to start the episode.
Yeah, I think this might be our most depressing episode yet.
Sure.
But given our personalities, perhaps we can attempt to make it a bit more flowery. So this week we are diving into not the dark web, but to me the dark web. The web that it's not even gray. It's
right, yeah.
It's not a good place to be, but almost all of us have tripped into it at one point or another. And especially not just us as adults, but children trip into it very easily. And so we're going to be talking about content farms, about slime videos, and what's the final thing?
Reaction videos. Also.
Yeah, so it just keeps layers of worseness, but it's fine.
It's kind of exciting also because this episode I mentioned to you in the morning, it's kind of structured a little bit like an essay, like a deductive essay where we're raising all these points. And I feel like people listening can tell what our points will be before we even say them, but it's still maybe a worthwhile conversation to be had. And then we're ending with the question, which we've been mulling over for the week: should we cancel streaming? Mm-hmm. Which I guess is like the we as in you and I, but also the we as in everyone. Should we as a culture, cancel streaming? That's what that term's used for, right?
Yes.
So starting off with what I have just written down on my page as demonic content. I feel like today we are really unpacking that term of content. This is a very content-focused episode. Usually we're kind of just there's all this content, but today we're describing what this content is, perhaps who is consuming it, and why it might be bad, or maybe good. Maybe demonic content is good.
Yeah.
It isn't. But this really kind of breached the mainstream in, I think, 2016, 2017. It's called ElsaGate. It has its own Wikipedia page. And for those who are fortunately unaware of this, it's basically the side of kids' YouTube, which the platform kind of cracked down on, but at least in those years, and there is still a lot that persists today, is very inappropriate and gross and just feels off. You just get a feeling of wrongness. I've never watched any of these videos, but you can tell just by the thumbnails and the titles that they appeal to all the things that children are curious about, which is inappropriate for children. And I'll let the listeners fill in the blanks on that. I didn't want to go too deep into the specifics of that kind of demonic content because this is a beautiful, sustainable, tactile podcast. But I did have a recommendation for a good video essay on YouTube, which is called These Kids Channels Are Still Horrifying, Here's Why. It's by a channel called Alex Miyusi, I think. So that's like a 25-minute long deep dive down the rabbit hole. And he also talks about the potential horrifying future wherein machine learning are assembling all the videos and also in charge of censoring or curating them. So it's quite a potentially dark future. What do you think about these videos? Alicia, do you like them? Do you watch them in your spare time?
I don't. Basically, what I gather is after like 2011, people just kind of acted like the problem was solved, like there wasn't a bunch of this bad content circulating. And then again in 2018 at ElsaGate, it was like, no, it's fixed. But it certainly isn't. Perhaps it's become slightly less explicit in how it's being portrayed. I will give a couple of examples just for people who don't know, because it is like, you might not understand it.
Yeah.
Basically, there were, on YouTube, there's the algorithm, so you click on a video, the parents maybe screened it, and we're like, okay, it's just a video of Paw Patrol, like it's just a full episode, whatever. But then within 4 to 5 automatic plays, it's like, you know how you watch a video, then something comes up, or something comes up in the recommended, it would get to these videos that looked innocuous, like one of the titles was Itsy Bitsy Spider played at Kids Playground, or like it was something like that. But then the video was just this like demonic looking spider chasing a kid.
Right.
But the audio was just the Itsy Bitsy Spider. So if you put your laptop in front of a kid and they were hitting next, you wouldn't hear anything wrong. And because kids have this fascination with the macabre and with things that are taboo, they're not especially likely to tell you that that's what scared them or whatever.
And it's not always scare, right? Sometimes it's just a curiosity, whether it's something like that's inappropriately kind of bodily. Like there's a lot of toilet stuff, teeth stuff.
Yeah.
Like, as you say, spiders and like creepy things like that, but also just like breastfeeding. Like it'll always plays on those kind of curiosities that children have, which I don't know. And the other thing to mention is that these videos almost invariably have at least millions of views, like tens of millions of views. And it's quite worrying. I feel like the people who make them and are profiting off it are pretty much the worst people. No offense if you are listening to Solacene. Actually,
offense. Please stop.
Yeah, please stop.
So that's the videos, like how they are.
Yeah.
But that's been slightly monitored a bit, especially because all of the studios, like the Disney and Nickelodeon, they were like, I don't want...
Because it always uses the likenesses of Spider-Man or Elsa or whatever it may be. But
exactly.
That's like the worst of the worst, basically.
Yeah.
I hope so, anyway. But I was thinking this week about the way it's kind of softened into more mainstream, and especially what fascinates me is more grown-up leaning audiences.
Yeah.
Like this week, there was a few things that kind of made me think just out and about. I saw a couple of iPad kids out in the wild. Yeah. More than a couple, actually, and that's always worrying. And it's also crazy to me how widespread that meme is of the iPad kid. Because I always thought, I think I mentioned this on an episode before, but I thought it was kind of an in-joke that you and I had. Yeah. I didn't realize that it was just a whole generation
of kids.
Yeah, not of kids that are iPad kids, but like that know about it as a meme. Oh, yeah, he's an iPad kid. It's like, why is that a term? That's horrible.
Yeah.
But also, we voluntarily went to go see the Super Mario Brothers movie in cinemas. And it just struck me as something that 10, 15, 20, however many years ago, people would have seen it and it would have driven them to sickness. Yeah. Because it was so bright and so manic. And I liked the movie. Like, that's the thing. We both came away like, that was okay. But then the more I think about it, I was like, that's probably not healthy for children. No. It didn't help. Let me be clear that we were sitting in the second row. Yeah. Third row. So we had to just lean all the way back so our eyes could take it in. Yeah. And it felt like if eyes could vomit, then
that's kind of what was happening.
It would have produced that. But you know what I'm talking about? Like, there were a lot of adults seeing that movie, or at least teenagers, not with children.
Yeah, certainly. Okay.
But I think that the colors, the mania, the editing, the rapidity of it all is very inspired by these YouTube
kids' videos. Yeah. So, oh my, I just don't even know. I want to try and remain calm because I just feel very strongly about these topics. So, yeah, I think it's definitely filtered into adult content. I'm going to get into that in a bit when I talk about content farms and like the kind of industry that's around that in
Yeah.
just creating videos to be explicitly eye-catching and addictive.
But
A little
also
bit,
vapid and
like
gross and bodily often.
I think a good example, perhaps one that's slightly more widely known, is the movie Turning Red. I will gripe about this movie until the day I die. Perhaps. Hopefully I'll forget
I
it.
hope not, yeah. That would be good.
But it was a movie that's, marketed towards kids, but also as a family movie. So, like, there's that kind of age-old, like, adult humor in it kind of hidden in, but that it's not, like, dirty or anything. It's just like, oh, adults will find this funny. But I found in this movie there were a few moments that felt like good examples of how maybe it's not explicitly like during Elsagate when something was just explicitly like sexual or gory. But in this one it was like the characters would like twerk.
Yeah.
Or they would like
I know what you mean.
do things that it's like, this isn't good for kids to watch. Because it's like the movie wanted to be empowering to young girls about their periods, and it's like, yeah, of course I'm on board for that. But it's like periods are completely different from sex. Like they're very different things. Like I know that they're connected, but it's like you shouldn't then just immediately be like, you got your period, now you need to act like this, or like whatever this movie was trying to say. And that's one of the big issues with these YouTube videos, is that child psychologists have found that kids are acting as if they've been abused. This is very dark, but just a heads up, that's what I'm about to talk about. But yeah, the YouTube, like the psychologists are finding, the kids are having all the symptoms of abuse, either physical, mental, or sexual, and not actually being abused. And the reason that they're having these responses is because the repeated exposure to stressful or to fearful or intense emotions that they get from these YouTube videos. Yeah. And they say, like, it used to be 9 times out of 10, like, you'd know what the cause was, but now it's, like, way more common that it's YouTube is the cause. It's not an adult.
Even the benign videos, right? Like, not the ones that sneak in, as you say, the ultra gory or sexual stuff.
Yeah, like I'm saying with this
Super Mario Brothers movie.
Yeah.
Like something like that. Like, thankfully it was only, like, this is me being conditioned, but it was only 90 minutes.
Yeah.
But if I had been watching that for even, like, half an hour more, I feel like your mind will be reeling, let alone if you were 3. Yeah. And I'm not saying, like, parents who take their kids to see that movie is bad. I'm just saying, using it as an example of something that, given kind of unrestricted access to or for too long, it can be harmful. Yeah,
it damages their literal like prefrontal cortex that like makes decisions and makes them like self-aware and makes them be able to plan ahead and like see the consequences of their actions. Like it just damages it because the stressful impact isn't necessarily being scared or whatever, but it's being constantly exposed to like, oh, this is a video of someone's teeth falling out. This is like glue being poured into someone's nose, and it's like that's stressful because it's just like because stress isn't necessarily negative. Like you can have positive stresses, but it's not good.
I feel like it's a bit hard to describe the visceral reactions to this kind of thing because it's almost like designed to weird you out in this gross way. It reminds me a little bit of trypophobia or trypophobia, like the phobia of or the repulsion or the aversion to kind of organic looking holes. You know what I mean? There's like pizza and stuff like that sometimes. It reminds me a little bit of that. For people who don't know, maybe don't look that one up actually. It's kind of gross also.
Yeah, not everybody has a phobia, but a lot of people do.
It's a common thing because it's just like a psychology, like a human thing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go on YouTube Kids and just take a survey of like the top 10 videos popular in Canada or something like that.
How did that make you feel, Aaron?
Well, I don't know if this is the Lord stepping in, but YouTube Kids is not available in our region.
Oh.
Our region meaning Quebec. It literally says that. It's like all of Canada, brackets, except Quebec.
What is Quebec doing?
Quebec's strange.
I have questions, but...
But anyway, so that's...
It's not available.
It's not available.
From my experience working with kids over the years, I've been exposed. I can tell you kind of a summary of what would be on the homepage.
Very bright color. Let me predict.
Okay.
Very bright colors. There'll be one video and it'll be like, it's not even a child girl. It'll just be a woman with like pigtails and pink like hair ties or something.
Yeah.
And maybe braces kind of photoshopped in.
Oh, Smash the table. I
But you know,
hate it
like
so much.
that's something that immediately I'm like, why are there adults in these, and why are they acting like that? I understand, like children's television shows, I'll say Blue's Clues.
Yeah.
It's like there's a grown up in that, but they act mostly like grown ups.
Yeah.
They soften themselves because they're talking to children.
Like Mr. Rogers. It's like he's an adult, but
he doesn't like crawl around and like I don't know, do that kind of stuff, or do like the really crazy expressions when they pour slime. But yeah, so with this pouring slime, I was thinking, because last week on the episode I mentioned like TikTok. Isn't it funny how this was a platform which was initially populated by children or adolescents and now has become infiltrated by all grown-ups, and how might that have influenced the content that's being made for it now? And I was thinking about those like the food ones. You know, it's like, look at this person make disgusting nachos and they just pour it all on like the kitchen counter.
Do you want to know who's to blame for that?
Me. No, who?
I was first and last. His name is Rick Lax.
I thought you were going to say me.
No.
Okay.
He was a magician.
Right.
And he kind of, as a magician or like people who are in that form of entertainment, like they are usually like psychologically aware of like how the tricks work, right? So he started out with these videos of trying to get people to watch longer, and therefore if you watch longer, the people who make them make more money. And so he was like the father of all these food videos. Like he made specifically the nacho one.
Oh.
And all the ones with like noodle soup, like scooping out a spoonful and like spelling out something with like the vegetables. So those are all him.
What's wild is that those videos, I think grown-ups watch them.
Yeah.
And I know that children watch them. So it's like the line is blurring. And TikTok, when you think about the platform, not to get too kind of meta with it, but TikTok is pretty much defined by a blurry line between adolescence and adulthood. Like when you think about what TikTok is like, you picture like teens dancing and lip syncing, but then on either side of that you have other stuff, and it's like who's watching what. It's very blurry. I think there is a TikTok Kids as well, but I feel like kids aren't using that.
No. Yeah, with the blurring of the lines, I think it might have started from adults trying to be like, well, I want to understand what my teens are watching. I want to not be hip.
Yeah,
but then they get sucked into it the same because it's the same brain.
There's that, but also think about the dystopia of the children who were just raised on the Rick Lax.
Rick Lax.
And the Cocomelon. They straight up just become 14, then 18, then 25.
Yeah.
Time works like that. People age. People age, right?
Yeah,
But also ASMR. I feel like that's in here somewhere.
Oh my.
Those so satisfying videos.
Yeah.
Where just be something being sliced. And I just see it on the thumbnail and I'm like, what? It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird and I don't like it. And I don't understand it. So it's weird and it's not good.
And I think we need to actively stop consuming them. And if you see someone consuming them, shame them.
Yeah,
make them feel bad.
I just wrote in Solacene, no, in big letters. We're going to talk later about streaming. And I basically kind of broke streaming down for that part of the episode into, is it for art or is it for education? Is it for info? And I feel like that is a kind of a categorization that can be relaxed a little bit for adults because adults work hard. And I understand when people say, but I just want to chill and, listen to some whatever or watch something, whatever, just because.
Yeah.
But for children, I think that should be quite a strict duality in terms of their videos. If they are watching them, it's like, this is either art or this is education.
It's not to unwind and relax because they're kids.
They don't really need that. And if they do, just put them in a tree or give them a dodgeball or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think in the Solacene, one thing is like parents should trust their own moral center more so and just disregard entirely whether something has 100 million views, whether the other kids in the class are doing it. Because I think I could see that being a thing for like, I don't know, a 45-year-old dad who is not hip with YouTube, and they're like, well, this has this many views, it can't be that bad. All the kids in the class are watching it, can't be that bad. I feel like you should trust your own instinct when you see these things and be like, no, that's not for Jimmy or Timmy or whichever.
And it's like you could even screen these videos sometimes and it's like, well, this looks fine, but it's like you have to think about the repeated exposure to this. I am reading a book, I'll probably keep talking about it, but it's called like Life in 5 Senses, and the woman gave the example of turning her phone to black and white.
Right.
for a few times. Like you did that. And then she said when she did that, the colors just like in the room started looking brighter, because when you're looking at your phone, and that's kind of your point of reference of like the completely bright, completely vibrant versions of everything, when you then look at real life, everything will look duller. So even just that one act of like turning into black and white was useful. I've also, I mean, I don't want to be like giving people parenting advice. I don't know if any parents listen.
Right, we should.
But there's like research into what kids shows are good, and black and white is like the best place to start, even like turning your filters to be all black and white, because the kids are way more likely to walk away from it. But when it's on full blast color, they will be glued to it and like not move. But with Little Bear is one, what are some other ones?
So basically, the slower the better is what I'm going to guess.
The slower, and like the literal color grading like is important. And there's like been research into it, so you can just look up the list, and it's a good place to start, because I get wanting to kind of have the TV babysit sometimes. I don't think it's like perfect, but it is necessary given that like both parents are often working. Or
we're talking about in the Solacene.
Yeah.
No compromises in the Solacene.
Yeah, so no one needs to be the TV doesn't need to be babysitting. But we both we think we'll show our kids movies and things someday.
Yeah.
But it's like it needs to be intentional.
Curated.
Yeah.
We're going to basically, I think, have some kind of curriculum.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't think, I mean, like, we want to put in a lot of work into that because we value film and we value, like, that art form, but not everybody does.
Yeah, but more so because we value our children's brains.
Yeah.
I know it sounds so cruel.
No, but I'm just saying, you can look it up, or even just try the black and white trick with kids, like putting your laptop on black and white is a good place to start, and then it won't impact them as aggressively. A quick, brief overview of the YouTube home screen, because I didn't get to do that. There'd be a music video. It would be like, what does the fox say? Like some kind of actual mainstream song.
Well, what about Bowser singing Peaches?
Exactly, Bowser singing Peaches. There'd be a music video. There'd be a full-length episode of something.
Peppa Pig.
That
live Peppa Pig thing that's always playing.
Exactly.
Even I see that recommended.
Yeah. Peppa. There'd be a Cocomelon, always a Cocomelon, which is this like, I mean, if you haven't seen a still from this show, just look at it and tell me if you think it's demonic, because you look at it and you're like...
Using that word demonic, I feel like people might think we're being serious. Are you being serious?
There's just not a better word for it. Like, it's coming from a dark place.
Evil.
It's coming from...
Exploitative.
Yeah.
Here's what I think. If demons are real, this is where they are.
They're in Cocomelon.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'd be that. There'd be, just like a full-length innocuous cartoon, like a SpongeBob, a Peppa. Apparently Peppa isn't good, but anyway. And then there'd be slime video, unboxing, so unboxing toys. And then there'd be like a play with me where they're like, wow, we're going to make these ponies do whatever. And the thing with adults doing it is like, I'm not for exploiting kids on these, like to have the kids on it, because that's worse. But it's like the adults who are making these need to be aware that they're showing kids this is how adults act, and kids try to emulate adults.
Exactly.
So it's like, I remember the first kid that I was babysitting that kind of grew up like this. And there was a point where they were like, they turned like 9 or something. Like they started watching YouTube a lot more on their own, and they started acting like a baby, like a cartoon baby. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. But then kind of traced it back to these adults who are acting like babies, because when you turn 9 or you turn like whatever age it was, you start wanting to be adultish. So she starts acting like this. Anyway, it's just a weird thing, and be aware of it, and don't just be like, oh, it's fine, like it's cute.
Yeah.
Because it's not cute.
Another thing, like more parenting advice, I think, is that even with the things that people maybe think like that's not the best, that's not good, we'll say, but we put a time limit on. They only have half an hour of.
Yeah.
I feel like there are some things which aren't good in moderation. Like they're terrible in the smallest doses. Like something like it doesn't matter if the child wants to watch them also.
No, it doesn't matter. Because, the time limit thing, it's like, well, they only have half an hour of screen time. It's like, but it still should be like, educational or artful. Yeah. Like it should be intentional. You should have screened it, because sometimes...
Well, he's down to 1 cigarette a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
A 1-year-old.
Because sometimes shows, like, my mom, I remember, stopped me, I've probably said this a lot of times, from watching Caillou because I started having tantrums. But had she not been watching, she would have been like, oh, she's just having tantrums. But she was watching with me and realized I was just mimicking the behaviors of the cartoon. And Yeah, I get that you can't always watch it with your kid, but at least, yeah. I mean, just try your best.
I feel like people listening might be pulling that face right now. The one that's like that.
Yeah.
As in, like, what we're saying is kind of just the things we're talking about are kind of gross.
Yeah.
So do we have anything kind of light that we could maybe break up the episode with, Alicia?
No.
Oh, no meme of the week?
I have a meme of the week.
Okay.
I'll do it, but it's not especially light.
Oh, it's a dark one. No bad luck, Brian, today.
No, okay. The meme of the week is my toxic trait. Do you know that meme?
Vaguely.
So I use this in my head a lot. Like this morning, I opened the cupboard and I was thinking my toxic trait is blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, this is a good meme of the week. So it's a phrasal template.
Yeah, it sounds very twittery.
It's very twittery. It started on Twitter mid-2018. Someone just tweeted out earnestly, you gotta be mature enough to understand that you have some toxic traits too. It's not always the other person. And this only got 4 likes. That didn't go viral, but then people kind of started responding to it and saying my toxic trait is blank, but earnestly. So say my toxic trait is being codependent. I don't know exactly what, but
a little bit of that therapy speak as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then it kind of turned into people saying my toxic trait is I shop too much, or is one was that I think I could get into the salty splatoon. There's a lot of these.
Something very benign.
Yeah. And the reason I tried to pull a lesson from this, obviously, is that it was genuine, turned into trying to be funny, but it was kind of turning it was always about yourself. It was always vague, so it's saying my toxic trait.
Yep.
But I found it's a good example of how on the internet, our vanity kind of is turning into this kind of self-deprecating way of just trying to stand out the most. And I feel like it's really similar with these videos, but it's trying to find the most obscure, the funniest way to say my toxic trait is blank. And some people do really long things or be a reference. And it's you see this and you're oh no, all these people are self-deprecating, all these people are joking around when this is serious, but it's still a vain thing because you're trying to become viral and trying to have the funniest one.
Yeah.
And I feel with these videos that we're going to talk about right now about content mills is it has to, it's not out of nowhere. It does, I think, come from a vanity or from a obsession with money, which is kind of similar. But yeah, that's the meme of the week.
Toxic trait.
Yeah.
So what is yours? Is that what you were going to say? Or?
No, I don't have one.
But if you were on Twitter and you were
Yeah.
trying to go viral with something and you were thinking about it in the morning when you open the fridge or whatever, what would you say my toxic trait is?
I'm trying to think. What I was thinking when I opened the cupboard was my toxic trait is assuming there's food until I'm proven wrong.
Yeah,
which isn't even funny, but it's just I open up the cupboard and there's a box and I haven't checked to see if there's anything actually in it. And I just kind of pull out a bag of oatmeal every morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm I assume there's one in there, but I should have probably been looking in. Anyway, that was my toxic trait this morning. Content houses and farms. This is another level of...
That's where the demons live? Or?
This is their homes. Okay. Yeah. This is where they live. They still exist. The first... Big Brother kind of was the inspiration for a lot of these people, purportedly. But art collectives and communes have always existed because artists, you work alone. You don't work with other people unless you're doing a big mural or something. But even us, it's we don't know any other podcasters. But right. If there was a podcast collective, maybe we'd join it or whatever.
Because you bumping shoulders and being in a creative nexus of...
Yeah, and it's also just if you have your job, you need to relate to people. No one else can really get it the way that others can. So it's kind of where these come from. So I don't hate them. It's low-key a Solacene idea if it wasn't for creating content. This is the content houses I'm talking about because the farms are different. I'll get to those. But the houses, yeah, it's a bunch of usually young people come together and they're okay, we're going to kind of build brand recognition with this house. And then there's crossovers. So they kind of all...
So it's a literal house.
Yeah, it's a literal house.
In which reside several influencers.
Yeah.
Usually...
Curly hair.
With curly hair. The men I'm talking about. And they film themselves doing dances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I got it. Okay.
So I remember getting sucked into a vortex once. I'll go into my dark history. So like I always liked the YouTuber Liza Koshy. She was kind of like one of the first funny comedian ones. But then she had a boyfriend. I mean, they're separated now. David Dobrik, who everybody knows for the most part. And he was, I remember like I started slightly watching his videos because like they'd feature her and I was like interested. But then I was like, who are all these characters that seem like you need to know them?
Characters, yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
So there was like, I don't remember any of their names, but there was like 6 other guys and like 3 other girls. And I was like, then I had to start going back onto their channels and watching like all of this. Because I'm like, who is this?
So basically you'd follow it like a soap opera.
It's exactly like a soap
opera. Are these two together now? I thought she was getting with him.
So it's like they're making their videos. It's like, today I'm talking about this new car I bought. But then like there's this drama happening. So it's kind of that like, it's like that video where you have to count the basketball players, but then a gorilla runs through the screen.
I don't know that, but okay.
It was like I think it was a TV ad.
How old were you when you were into this?
Too old, like 15, 16.
Yeah, that is too old.
But because you get sucked in and you're just like genuinely curious, but then you end up giving them hundreds of views because you're watching other videos.
Sometimes dollars in
that's
merch, Patreon.
Yeah.
We'll get there. So soon we'll get there.
Yeah, but that's kind of the Content House thing. I was amused to hear one of the YouTubers that I still watch was the founder of like content houses. And I was like, I don't like that. But I mean, he's 30 now and he started it when he was like 16. So it's kind of like we grow, we evolve.
But it's also the case about children directing the economy and especially the entertainment economy, maybe a little bit too much.
Yeah, exactly. And the content farms are much more malicious. The content houses is like, yeah, exactly. They're kind of scammy and like TV show, but it's like but like TV shows aren't as bad as these content farms, which like infamously 5 Minute Crafts is like a content farm in that they put out 15,000 videos per month.
What?
Yeah. And I was like, I reread that so many times and I was like, no. But it's like, yeah, 15,000 videos per month.
We'll get that.
They're the 15th most subscribed to channel on YouTube.
But, okay, so by who? Who do you think's subscribing?
Seems like everybody.
Because I don't know what 5 Minute Crafts is. Is that for children?
You don't. It's like, it started out as like DIY hack because those were good SEO terms, like search engine optimization terms.
Yes.
And so it'd be like genuine kind of like silly, but they were hacks to life. It's like grease your pan with leftover bacon fat, or like use a piece of paper attached to the dustpan to catch more dust. Like it was hacks. But then they started getting parodied, and then they kind of leaned into that, and now it's like
deliberately dumb things.
Super dumb. It's like one of the most famous is how to sneak candy into class. Hollow out a glue tube and then put the candy in there, and like stuff like that.
That sounds like the intersection of the gross body and weird kid stuff that we were talking about and the reaction videos that we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
Because there's that guy on TikTok who was famous just for reacting to dumb things like that.
Yeah.
And I was always like, okay, I get the joke or whatever, but these are all very clearly deliberately dumb. Like the life hack videos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they are deliberately made so that you can say, but why wouldn't you just do, like they're made for that, so that you can, because they don't really care if it's dumb as long as you watch it.
Yeah, they don't care.
Also, it's for children, or a lot of children watch it.
Yeah, and you know when you scroll to the bottom of your, like it can be CBC, like it can be just what seems like non-clickbaity website, and then it's like there's these 3 things, and it's like curing cancer with apple seeds. What's this crazy thing that washed up on the shore of New York?
And dentists hate her.
Yeah, and dentists hate her.
Or 15 pictures she regrets.
Yeah.
And they're like a volleyball player.
Exactly. So it's like all these things. It's like, how do they get here? But it's these websites. Yeah, again, it's like acting like it's a problem of the past, but it still happens all the time. Even on my Pinterest, like there's these recommended things. But it's like they're written, like ghost written or freelance written for like super low amounts of money, but there's no control over what's in them. And it's like people were acting like, oh, they're very low. What was it saying? Like that the people writing them aren't experts. And I'm like, can you be an expert in dentist hater? Like, no. It's so anyway, these are all being basically created by companies who just make a ton of money by getting clicks and then maintaining people on their videos or on their
Yeah.
websites to read. And there's one more thing I just wanted to, I mean, you don't know about it. And I'm kind of asking the listeners if you knew about this, because I didn't. Because I always knew 5-Minute Crafts, but there's this new one called Troom Troom, which is apparently like the room of YouTube. Like, it's kind of cringy, but in like a low budget kind of way. Cringe videos, I suppose.
The Room, as in the Tommy Wiseau film, okay.
Yeah.
Which has a cult following for being so bad it's good.
Yeah.
Terrible acting, terrible
Exactly.
writing, just made to be laughed at.
So bad it's good. That's what this channel is, and I never heard of it. And apparently it's like people are trying to figure out who owns it, and there's just no information.
Yeah.
And even the women who star in it, like, they have Instagrams, and it's like we kind of know where they, like, what country they're from and like who they are, like their artists and their actors. But it's like really weird because they also said, I mean, I didn't even click on one to watch, but the articles I read said that the people who are in them, like, they're clearly native English speakers, but the way that they even say their words is as if it was put through Google Translate like 3 times to try and catch you with the words. Anyway, just don't watch these.
Sounds
That's the moral
touch
of the story.
Uncanny Valley. I feel like that's a good way of describing a lot of these videos, but that's the gross fascination with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like if adults want to spend their time doing that, I don't really care. But when children are subjected to it and they are attracted and they don't know why they're attracted to it, that really disgusts me.
And then they just
scares
start,
me.
internalizing.
But even think
these
about, like you
things.
mentioned, cringe videos there. Even think about that, I don't know, like 15 minutes we spent a few years ago watching the TikToks of the Indian Joker.
Yeah.
And it's like, look at this, these videos are so dumb, but they occupied like 15 minutes or something.
Of our lives.
Of our lives. So it's this deliberate dumbing down. And sometimes you go down the rabbit hole of brain rot and you think that you're above it. You're like, well, I'm just laughing at it.
Yeah.
It's like, but you're going down it all the same. So it doesn't matter. You're not really superior to it, even if you're watching it ironically or talking about it ironically.
Yeah, I didn't even get into Jubilee because that's a whole other
Yeah, that's
thing.
for another day, maybe.
Yeah, another day. Or just I might reference you to a video. You don't like at the same level that I do, but Alice Capel made a video recently about it, and it was just explicitly about Jubilee and how it's like porn, which is interesting because I do agree with the way that they use this. It seems like it has the same hold on people's brains. So check that video out, or we'll try and talk about it another time.
Reaction videos. I think we've been recording for about 40 minutes already, and we still have 2 questions really to get to. So we'll rush through reaction videos a little bit because I think it is quite a straightforward phenomena.
Yeah.
I kind of listed all the ways that I think it appeals. What we actually asked ourselves was who listens and why.
Yeah.
The who listens, as always, very hard to, or who watches, is hard to discern. You can tell by the thumbnail what is directed for who.
Yeah.
You know, like which are for children, as you said, unboxing, that's kind of a reaction video, or the ones that are for gamers, or the ones that are for film bros or whatever, but you're never quite sure who is actually watching.
Yeah.
But anyway, I feel like, because I've watched a few of these deliberately, and the main appeal, I think, is this kind of parasocial dynamic of, I want to know what X is thinking about Y. So like, for instance, with the Oscar nominations, or even the Oscar awards, I think for the last 2 years, I watched this video of a film video essayist that I watch on YouTube sometimes, just reacting to the nominations.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why would I want that? Mostly because it's something of a bellwether for the entire film community's opinions on things.
Yeah.
So it's the same reason that I say sometimes I have a slight compulsion to check the comments, because I want to know what other people are saying about it. Not to influence myself, just so I can know kind of how I compare, I suppose. And because I like seeing where culture and society stand on certain things. So I think that's one reason. And I feel like it's not all bad. I'm not just trying to excuse my own behavior here, but it's something like a real-time review sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, because generally I think we are watching because the person knows more about the thing than we do. Like, I wouldn't watch someone less educated on film talk about the Oscar nominations than I would. But if it was like Steven Spielberg reacts to the Oscar nominees and it was a 15-minute video of him in front of the camera talking about them, then that would have value, because it's like he has expertise on this. But so I don't think it's that bad. And I feel like if it was after the fact, which it usually has been through history, like critical reviews, let's say in the newspaper, have been a thing for like a century or more, then it wouldn't be looked down on so badly always. But this is just one example, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely two categories. There's the review type where it's like a reaction to, but it's more of a unpacking. And
Giving
there's
my
the
thoughts.
ones that are literally just people playing a game and you don't see a single frame of the game. You just see their face.
Yeah.
And their reaction that way. There's a theory, it hasn't been proven, based on a study done on apes of tracking which neurons fire when they receive food and when they see a human receiving food.
Yeah.
And it's the exact same reaction in their brain. So there's a theory that we have these neurons called mirror neurons. They're like this, I mean, they're not literal neurons, but this capacity in our brain that when we see someone else do something, it's almost the exact same as if it's happening to us.
I mean, that's just, as you say, like, that's a theory, it hasn't been proven, but it's like we've been saying all semester, it's like, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's just that science hasn't caught up. Like, that's just obvious.
Yeah.
You can see it in the rise of people who watch video games rather than play them, who watch movies, watch someone watching a movie rather than just watching it themselves, who watch pornography rather than, you know, whatever. Like, there is definitely this rise in a kind of voyeuristic urge that people have, and it's definitely not healthy, and people definitely treat it way too benignly for what it actually is. I was on Reddit because I was trying to find people talking about the reaction video, specifically who watches it, but there was this one comment someone put in, like, why are these a thing? And they wrote, part of it is the same as why we'd rather watch someone play a game we own and can play ourselves. It's just ... a bit better, almost like having company without all the nasty disadvantages of actually having company.
Yeah.
So I wrote after this, in Solar Scene, no. Because I feel like that's the trend of the episode, is just probably our most unimaginative one yet. The most
just saying things that we're
yet,
saying no. Yeah, it definitely sounds very conservative.
There's nothing wrong with conservatism for things that are just evil.
Yeah.
If something is new and evil, it's good to be a conservative with regards to that issue. Yeah, that's
true. I think what these videos do, and kind of all the ones we've talked about, is I liked the phrasing that was used here, and it says we're binging on emotions. And I think this kind of falls in all of these, like the highs and lows, and like, just seeing someone else be emotional because we're so deprived of emotions in real life. Like seriously, in the run of a day, like barely laugh, barely cry, barely have any kind of reactions, let alone see other people do that, because we're
outsourcing our emotions in a way, and especially our expressions. Because the thing with these people is that, from what I've seen of reaction videos, they are almost always performative. They almost always, if not outright acting, then just exaggerates into a cartoonish degree. But maybe because it's children watching them, maybe because that blurry line between children's content and adult content, or maybe because people have just become so unfamiliar with what actual human emotion looks like, it just kind of is treated as normal. When someone is like, a grown adult is like throwing themselves around because the movie they didn't like wasn't nominated, or you know, whatever it may be, or it's like reacts to a trailer and it's like there's some cameo and people like start jumping up and down. It's like, that's not how humans actually are. It reminds me also of the TikTok videos people make of themselves crying. It's like, this is acting though. This is performative. Yeah,
and it's just so much more. Like last night we went to watch a kind of culty, what would you say? Culty's in the bed.
No, not culty.
Campy.
Yeah, campy.
A campy movie.
A horror movie, a B movie.
And it was like, you're in a group. So it's like, this is kind of what these videos are trying to emulate. So people were like kind of shouting out like comments.
Yeah.
But it was just like, not so over the top. It's just like, oh man.
Yeah, because they're real people.
Because they're real people. But then if you're a kid watching these videos, you think that these are real people, but they're not. Yeah. And it's just, it kind of like that experience was really like, this is a live reaction video, like a live people reacting and trying to be entertaining, because that's what we do when we socialize, is try to like get other people to laugh and smile. Yeah. But then it's like, sometimes when people would laugh, it would just be like a genuine laugh, not like a ha ha ha. Like, I feel like even the way that we express ourselves is so different from what's natural. Go to a screening, go be around people.
Yeah.
That's my message.
All that being said, the final question of the day: should we cancel streaming?
Had to break it down.
Yeah, of course.
Because
streaming these things, I feel like you should stop streaming those kids' YouTube videos.
Yeah, I need to get off of Cocomelon and Baby Sensory. That's really hard for me. But I think I was even, the last few weeks I've got sucked into a rabbit hole of podcasts. And I was like, this is increasingly, every single time I leave the house, I put in headphones, because that's the time that I listen to podcasts. Like, I don't when I'm home. Just because it's like, makes the walk go quicker, I guess. And I think I'm going to try and cut back on those. But my conclusion overall was setting a kind of TV guide like schedule for the week, because I'm trying to set goals for the week as is. I mean, this is a very personal question. I'm not prescribing, but to try and set a TV guide. So look through the podcasts I want to listen to the YouTube videos that may come out that week that I want to watch, and just literally scheduling them. And then if something new comes out, like, oh wow, they released 2 videos this week, or there's an extra podcast that I found that I want to listen to, saying, no, you'll have to schedule that for another week. But with canceling streaming, I think it'd be interesting to do a trial period. Like go a week, a month, just no streaming at all and having to download things or do nothing.
So I broke it down basically into video, audio, and other. And you touched on the audio with the podcast there.
Yeah.
And each of those I broke down into art and info, like I talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Your podcasts, I'm guessing, are more on the info side.
Yeah, they are.
They're educational things.
Mm-hmm.
So art, let's say for audio, that's music, typically. So we both use Apple Music. And recently, I just deleted the app entirely and switched to the new one, Apple Music Classical. Shout out. It's because I feel like this, again, it's quite a personal thing. But I think we talked about before how lyrics have a kind of mental clinginess.
Mm-hmm.
They stick to you. They stick to me anyway. They stick to my mind. When I wake up, often I'll have song lyrics going through my head, even if it's a song I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Just in quiet moments, often I'll have that kind of thing. And so the reason I kind of switched to a classical thing is because in format, it's similar to music, but I don't to lyrical music, but I don't listen to it as much. So it's like I'm not as drawn to it, but also there's no lyrics, obviously. So it doesn't have that kind of clinginess. That's for me. And my main point here is that with streaming, you can listen to any song ever. So you can just try out a bunch of different songs and listen to the first few lyrics. And I don't think that is the kind of freedom I really want with, let's say you have headphones in, words just kind of being put directly to your brain.
Yeah.
I'd rather it be a more intentional and deliberate thing, as in this is something that I have bought.
Go and buy the CD or even buying the album. I think,
bought digitally or physical, whatever, because I know the lyrics and I know that they're not going to
have a negative impact.
Yeah, kill my soul. Be demonic, as it were. And with the info with podcasts, I do think those in healthy moderation. Like even the solo scene, if someone was like, I just listened to 3 episodes in a row, I would say, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah, I think
that's too much.
I've been trying to, because this is a question I think will be ongoing for us over this semester, to look into alternatives. And for podcasts, because I was kind of getting sucked into that, I was like, maybe I could subscribe to like The Economist magazine, like the physical one. Mm-hmm. But then it is like so expensive. So I was like, that's kind of silly when there's literally a free podcast. Yeah. So I feel like for me, the scheduling and like limiting is a good place to start.
And the other thing with that is, if it's an educational thing, you have to treat it as something of an educational thing. Like sometimes it'll be like this YouTube video, which ostensibly is like, this will teach you something. But if you watch it in a very shallow way while you're eating, you're not really catching it. You might be listening to music or like talking to someone at the same time. It's not educational at all. Then it is just background, quote unquote, content. So you have to treat these things seriously if you actually want to learn from them. That's something that I've tried to adopt. Like, because on YouTube even defies description the size of the library of just outrageously educational video, which in any other time in history would have cost an inordinate amount of money. Like you can get things, conversations straight from the best in the world, or whatever it may be, to you for free. But you have to take it kind of seriously if you actually want to internalize all of that.
I think it's true. One more thing I like about the idea of limiting is kind of along those lines, in that if you want to try something out, or you want to try out even like a new topic of like learning about, you have to try it out. Like you have to schedule it in one of your, say you give yourself 1 video a day or 3 a week. Like it's going to take up a spot, because I feel like this is a good in between of literally buying DVDs or buying CDs, because that's still a bit, like it's a financial burden. Whereas with this, it's kind of as if you have CDs and DVDs that you're buying.
Yes.
And you can do that. And maybe you could even do some kind of clearing out your Apple Music, clearing out whatever you use, and then saying I can do one every 2 weeks, and you have to really get to know that album, but then it's in your library. Also. Yeah.
Or re-listen.
Something like that. That's cool. So that's all I had on that. What about you?
Yeah, I had a lot of thoughts about what you just said, listen to the album. A couple times this week I listened to a vinyl album.
Yeah.
Your vinyl albums all the way through. And it's like, this is weird, and I feel a little bit like a hipster. But on the other hand, it's nice. I'm not too into music, so I don't feel strongly about this like I know some people do. It's nice to listen to an album from start to end as intended. Mm-hmm. And I mean, even on this episode, I have the John Keats selected poems. Like, these aren't really arranged as they were intended. So I know that what happens to art is that the favorites tend to last. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, in 100 years, people will listen much more to the Taylor Swift greatest hits than they will to any one of the albums from start to finish. Like, I understand this, but I do think sometimes it's nice to experience a full thing in context. I feel like otherwise there's a slight analogy of when you go on YouTube and you see just random scenes from films that are trending, and it has like 5 million views, this epic scene from Endgame, Avengers. That's not really how movies are meant to be watched. Not to be too much of a pedantic kind of purist about it, but, you know, that's not really what it's supposed to be. I know we upload like solo scene clips to social media, so maybe we're contributing to that also.
Yeah, maybe.
But also on the topic of video, I feel like in general streaming, what we can say about it is that it's excellent for finding. It's excellent for finding film or YouTube videos that you didn't know existed and that are like genuinely just great things. But maybe the streaming format is not always the best for watching them. I know, like, objectively it is the best because you can watch the things quickest and more of the things than if you were like going to a cinema or trying to buy it. But I think there's something about the fact of it always being in an up next. Like, for instance, if you watch something on Netflix, the credits just often don't play it or just skip to the next thing. And it's like, just watch a 2-hour, I don't know, masterpiece. Why would I want to skip to the next one? Bridgerton or the next one. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't give it enough room to breathe, kind of. I talked before about how I like how DVDs have the behind the scenes features. I think that's a really great thing. There's also the fact of, like, this is just home video in general, but pausing. People often pause and go to get a snack or pause and say, we'll watch the rest tomorrow. We do that probably a little bit too often, which I feel like is not the best way of experiencing art or great stories. And lastly, I feel like in terms of, this sounds mildly anti-consumer, but in terms of paying for something, when you have that commitment, you learn to like it a bit more because you have to watch it because you paid for it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Whereas, I don't know, it just makes you a bit more, I think, tactful and intentional about what you watch. Because, like, well, I'm going to put money towards this, so I won't just watch like something awful on Tubi to pass the time because I'd have to pay for it. Mm-hmm. Something like that. I know Tubi's free anyway. But
yeah, I like these ideas, trying to change things up a little bit. And hopefully this episode was at least enlightening, if not inspiring, in some kind of twisted, negative way. Inspiring.
Try and say something Solacene.
Something Solacene.
How are you?
Doing well. While I was meditating in the park this morning, I heard a symphony of birds.